It's been 40 years since I had Marangettum. So one has in a sense watched lots and lots of dance. One has observed the changes over a period of time, not only in terms of what is being danced, but how the dancer has also changed, because I think the two are very linked. My first teacher, as I always mention, was from the Sevelar community, and for her dance, what it meant, it was her lifestyle, and it was very much something that she had grown into, and it was kind of preordained that she would go into dance. It was not a choice that one had and one takes on. But today I think things are very different, where people come into dance having other options open and yet making a conscious decision to come into dance. I think few of us in our generation and even before made that choice, and you people have many more choices, hence it's more difficult to zero in on dance and finally take that decision that this is what you want to do. So a lot has changed over a period of time. You don't resign to the fact that because your father and mother did that, you are forced to do that. It's no longer like that. That's one change as to how the dancer has changed, and most of us today go through formal education and then make that choice whether we want to take up dance or stay with academia. So I guess, you know, that brings in a whole new canvas with it in terms of viewing things in a larger context. And earlier maybe they did Sanskrit, they did languages, they did music, they did rhythm, they did dance, they did all the allied areas, but maybe not so much of formal education like the way today's dancers are engaging in. No value judgment attached to it, but obviously the head changes, and there is a different kind of a skill basket that today's generation brings, and I think every few years that skill basket is changing, because when I sit to teach today, I many times have to unlearn many things that I kind of think this is how the child will be, but the reaction is completely something very different. So I'm not prepared for that. So the unlearning of the teacher is also very important, because teacher has to move with. It's no point living in nostalgia and saying this is how the great masters did it and I would want to do it the same way. Things have changed. So that's one thing. Audiences have changed to a large degree, I would say, from maybe the temple audience, for whom this was the only form of entertainment. They came to the temple and they watched dance. Today, entertainment has taken a completely new dimension, and it has there's so many different ways in which you can spend your spare time. Even click of a button, you have 100 channels beaming at you. So it's the easiest is to become a couch potato at home and just keeps changing channels. So I guess with all these options, what is it that in the dance makes people come to the auditorium and make them watch? This has also made dance change, because we are expected to create spectacle. We are expected to create special events through dance so that it pulls in a crowd. Just saying a normal classical dance recital, a solo recital, sometimes lacks the glamour and lacks the reason to attract more people. So organizers do kind of say what is new and what is it that you can kind of, what will be a talking point in your work. So I guess these are changes which each one of you has to be aware of, and at some point you're going to encounter it when you step out as professional dancers. So hence, firstly, from a solo we are moving more into the group scenario, because spaces where we perform have also grown. They become very large. From a temple, little space in front of the Garbhagriha, to be moving into maybe Siri Fort or a stadium is a huge jump. And where my first guru used to always say that, all the 30 meter has to be within this round, you can't move. Just to create this chalk and create a round and say, hold your Aramandi in such a way that you dance within this circle, which is very difficult. It's very, very difficult, because even as you move in a Takadimi, you have little flexibility to pull up a little and move, but here when you are in the same circle, it's very difficult. You have to just be grounded. So from that kind of a situation to, if today somebody doesn't occupy space, the first thing the critic writes is, she doesn't have sensitivity vis-a-vis space, and she didn't occupy space, which means there have to be leaps, there have to be jumps, there has to be lot of movement. So this has become a generational shift in the way you view dance today. So I think we need to also understand what is the reality, because there's no point saying, oh, we are not able to do, but things have changed. So we have to be not lamenting about it, but reacting to the changed scenario and seeing how best we can adapt or create in order to compete in the marketplace, so to speak, because for too long it's been like a holier than thou attitude, where the dancers are doing a service and that kind of a thing. But today you have to understand that you are in the market space competing for time, competing for attention. So how is it that you're going to package your wonderful style, which you have so much conviction in? How do you make others also come into the fold and engage and involve and appreciate the relevance of it? So I think this is a huge challenge, and there are no simple answers to each one of them, because we all at the end of the day also want to hold to the traditionality of the style, the authenticity of the style. So how far would you like to step out is something that each dancer decides to herself. Many people don't mind going any extent to kind of get that attention, but we've kind of stayed within a certain boundary that we've drawn for ourselves. Nobody else draws it for you. You draw it for yourself, and then try to create work or try to adapt existing work. So there are two distinct ways of doing it. One is keeping the traditional vocabulary and staying within the tradition. Supposing we take the Margam itself, and how can the Margam be reinvented? How do you revisit the Margam? So I think I started this process of revisiting the Margam many years back, when I was assisting my guru in teaching. In fact, just the other days I was rummaging the tapes, and we came across one tape in which Guruji had said, these are my students, I want them to dance, do something with them. And this is the annual day, and they have they know these many pieces. So I had taken a Desh Tilana of Guruji, and they knew the Desh Tilana. So I just placed them in different ways and tried to create, that was my first attempt at some kind of group effort. And then I forgot, then I went into my solo work, and I was dancing a lot. And then again, I see it's also many times it's when you have good students and they are dancing in a class, you suddenly get an idea. And you see, when you juxtapose, because I've always heard Madhavi say this, many people have asked Madhavi Mudgal also, why did you go into group? She says, when I see bodies in the class, I get ideas. And many times you feel this particular Adav was so beautiful from another angle, but you always view it frontally. So you want to see how, when it's juxtaposed, how it looks, and how the Adavu can be actually shown in 3-4 dimensions and 3-4 directions, and it creates a completely different experience. So this is how each one of us, we were not forced into the group, but we started teaching very early. So when we started teaching very early, we already had a lot of students very early dancing with us, in the sense we could dance with us. So that also prompted us to give them space to come on stage, because as soloists they wouldn't have made it for many more years. So but we wanted them to have that stage experience. So this was the reason why many of us started doing group work, and then we got identified as people who do only group. So this slotting becomes a bit of an issue in dance, where you start doing one thing because of passion, and then everybody thinks you're capable of doing only that and not something else. It's not that we gave up dancing solo, we can do group also. That was the thing. But we enjoyed doing group more than anything else. We enjoyed doing group. It was not a forced market force telling us that now you won't exist in the market if you don't do a group. I don't think that should be the motivation to create group at all. It should be a felt need to create a group. Then of course the first production came much later. So I'm just saying that because I had students, I started kind of playing around with bodies. And initially it was with the marga. We didn't really look for a piece outside of the marga. Simple things like the alaripu, started placing them differently, and instead of doing just the static positions, doing walks for those, and the namaskars being used in different ways, using some of the yoga positions. So all these ideas started kind of crystallizing, then breaking up portions of everybody not doing everything. But I've never ever done choreography one into many. I've never done that, because right from the beginning I've always felt that that is classroom dancing which is being put on stage and being called choreography. That is really not choreography at all.
What is choreography in this sense, if you have to define it, for instance?
Very hard to define, because it's a very personalized process and a very personalized effort, So for me there are many layers to choreography, and it's very, for each particular work, choreography has a different meaning. When you're doing a work with somebody else, then choreography is completely different. You have to understand that person's genre and understand the person's work progression, how she or he has gone, and then kind of find some kind of a area, overlapping area, where this is their area, this is my area, and this is the common area, and then try and build on that, and also maybe even exemplify the differences. If they are so different, then that creates a contrast. So for then that would be choreography there. But in the traditional way, it's basically trying to look at existing material and trying to see how best we can project it. And for example, we had taken a varnam to be done in group. Initially what we said was, the process was very interesting. Initially if I had 7 dancers, I would always think of using all 7 on stage all the time. I never thought that, there could be entries and exits, and we could have 2 sometimes, and 4 sometimes, and 7 sometimes. It's much later that we realized that what is the so sacrosanct about all 7 being on stage all the time?
In fact, I remember that time when it dawned upon us, suddenly we'd been doing all this time, all of us on stage, and suddenly one day you came up and said, but why should that be?
Yes.
We have wings for a reason.
Yes.
So
yes.
Some of us can leave and create more patterns with the
more patterns, and then the monotony is broken, you see. So this comes with experience and with doing productions one after the other, and specific pieces like the varnam becomes very difficult to do in a group, is what I always felt. So for many years I never did the varnam in a group. We used to do the tillana, we used to do jatiswaram, we used to do the alaripu, those things, and padam we never thought about doing in a group, because for me I think the padam was such a solo experience that for me to translate it into a group was unthinkable, is still unthinkable in many ways, because it's what should I say, it's so intrinsically linked to the music. It's a one-to-one connection between the dancer and the musician. That's very difficult to break it up and do it in a group. So anyway, so the fact is that when we came to the Varnam and I started thinking as to how the Varnam should be done, one interesting technique to do the Abhinaya portion particularly. The Nritta portion still is, you can still get patterns, you can get sections, you can, kind of directions, bodies, juxtaposition, positioning, all that you can do. But when it came to the Abhinaya, I still wanted the solo experience and yet to be done in a group without losing the essence of communication in terms of Abhinaya. So we suddenly realized that why not use lights, why not use a different kind of an approach. So we had one dancer coming into a spot, doing one hasta, one hand for a whole line. And then we suddenly had another dancer coming in another light spot. When that spot would go, and the spot would be here, and she would do completely a different hand for the same line, interpret it in a different way. And the same would be another spot. We didn't have symmetrically 2 spots. We had 1, 2 and 3 asymmetrical spots. So it would be this, 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 this. We were not very clear initially whether we would be able to achieve it technically, because many auditoria don't have lights coming from there, lights coming from the front, lights coming from the side. But we managed it. So it is very interesting to still keep the solo effect, because it was not as though one hand was multiplied and 5 people were doing the same hand. That was not the thing. And then in the Tattimettu, what happened was 3 of them got together in a cluster, and they, instead of moving right up here, they were moving diagonally up here. So we tried different ways of approaching Abhinaya in a group, because for a long time I had a mental block towards doing Abhinaya in a group. Because I always wonder, how would you do Abhinaya in a group, particularly when you've gone through the solo experience of learning, you've gone through the depths of what is possible, then to kind of think of it in a group was
not like a ballet where people are
and not like a ballet, because this is Margam after all, and the Margam has a certain decorum and sanctity to it and a depth to it also. So I guess these were some of the ways how we tried to address the thing, and it became one of our best choreographic pieces, the Varnam, as I was saying, because it was quick, it was racy, there were so many entries and exits that when suddenly there were 2, suddenly there were 8, suddenly there were 4, each swaram had a different look to it, each swaram occupied different spaces on stage, it was not always center. So you guided the audience to be looking at different areas and different spaces, which were then obviously controlled by the lighting also, where the lighting forms a very important and integral part of group choreography, because I think group choreography requires some other parameters. In solo, the musicians are your main parameters with which you work. Here there can be other parameters that you move on to, with the help of which you kind of work. So I guess if Balamma were alive and she would have seen some of this work, I don't know how she would have reacted to it. But I feel that I feel this is like, and I asked you all also, I remember, did you all feel different when you did the Abhinaya in those sections? And you felt no, because even when the other person was performing, you were equally involved. So you did not disconnect after your hand or after your portion of that thing was over.
I remember we would freeze.
We would freeze because we never know with lights. That's the other thing. In technical thing, I would always, even before beginning a program, I would always say get into the act. Don't freeze. Because you never know when the lights might come on before they are asked to come in. And never get out of character also before the lights completely go off. Otherwise there's a frozen expression there. After doing something very beautiful, you're like that. So, so those things need to be really kept in mind. But so I think that movement took very long for us to move and understand. So I'm saying group cannot happen all of a sudden. And for me also, I was trained as a solo dancer.
I was just going to ask you that question, Akra, that how did you sort of conceptualize, because you've always done solo performances, how easy or how difficult was it for to transform from No, it was a very gradual process, I think if I had not taught, I would have never been
a group choreographer or even attempted it at all. Because I taught, I saw multiple bodies all the time around me that one could think of, how it would look and what would be the, and you always dealing as a teacher, you're always looking at bodies of different forms, shapes, height, short, long, tall, with the different distributions of the body. So, you understand the anatomy very well as to how bodies work and what works on what body and how can it look, when put one against the other. You have a very good idea of that because that is what you're doing every day if you're sensitive to it. Otherwise, they're just bodies, But if you see them as choreographic material, then you play with it. Then you start enjoying the process.
Especially Akka, like the three of us are such different bodies. She's so tall, I'm short, she's somewhere in the middle. Our widths are also very different from each other. So how do you tackle that problem when you start doing a group? It's not necessary that you're lucky enough to find people who are same dynamics.
It's extremely difficult because for me, I have always had students with very different body types,
And do you appreciate that, or because these days there's a trend that you have to look a certain way?
Absolutely. And I've always been jealous of people like Madhvi, again, because I see a lot of work with her and we share a lot of, her students are all the same height, same waist size, same everything. So, but for me, because I've had different students, I sometimes feel the cloning is not my idea of group work. And many times you will realize you don't do the same things. You are doing different things. Some way you get together, but many times you're doing different things. So it's not necessary that group means like a ballet where every dancer looks the same. If you see Swan Lake and you see that line, you can't tell one from the other. So that has never been our idea of choreography, of being identical. I don't think, at least not for me. So I feel if there is a beautiful adavu that sits on her or sits on you or sits on you, I'd like to exploit that and use. And also I've been fortunate to have the same dancers over a period of time. See, in many cases what happens is dancers are quickly shifting. So then you need one kind of choreography which fits all. Anybody can get into that and get out of that, get into that, get out of that. It's just a character. But here it's not that. You are coming in because it's you in that position, or you're coming in because it's you, you're in that position. So it's not as though it's anybody can one size fits all kind of a situation. It's individual roles that you see which are fitted. So I guess there are different ways and different kind of situations how people compose and how people choreograph. Yes.
Do you think the approach of choreographing a certain piece on different bodies and on same bodies are different? The approach, like if
I've never had same bodies. Only once I had same bodies when we went to London. That's the closest I had. I had 5 of you all, and looking pretty much the same. So that was the only point where I said, this looks quite nice. Where suddenly the choreography which I had done before, when we tried to recreate, it looked very different, And I said, so I guess, I celebrate the difference in a sense. I try to celebrate the difference because, and it's again stems out of a very solo approach where you celebrate every kind of body and you tailor that to suit that body. See, because how was Balama with that kind of a frame able to attract and be so alive on stage? Today her body type would be like written off,
And also about your first guru, you said she had very stubby hands.
Very stubby hands, but they were the most evocative fingers I've seen ever. If she did this, they didn't go beyond this. But the kind of, it would just speak, And And on the other hand, I've seen Yamini Akka's fingers, which are like a mile long. She would keep on hasta and it would be like, oh my God, you know, you don't need to do anything, you know. So I guess it's not about the length, it's how you connect.
Akka, do you think, when you say we have different bodies, do you think that the way they think should also be different or should be the same?
Who thinks?
You think when a group is performing, every approach, like how we do a particular adu, should be the same as we think while doing that, or do you think each body can come up with their own and make it a unit?
I'm going to talk about this in the next class. Okay. Can we do the namaskar?